In fact, we begin with our breaking story. Boris Johnson has resigned as British Prime Minister. He made the announcement earlier today outside Downing Street. Pressure has been mounting on Johnson to go, with more than 50 ministers and lawmakers quitting their posts in the last 48 hours. Johnson was recently forced to apologize for appointing a lawmaker who had been the subject of sexual misconduct complaints. Now, he's also faced a damning report into parties at his Downing Street residence that broke strict COVID-19 lockdown rules. Johnson, who set up a new cabinet earlier today, will remain in office until his successor has been appointed. Now, candidates putting themselves forward for the position must be nominated by 2 other consecutive lawmakers. Several rounds of votes will then be held to whittle down the field. A Snap YouGov poll found that Defence Minister Ben Wallace is the favourite among Tory members to replace Johnson, followed by Junior Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt and former Finance Minister Rishi Sunak. But joining us now is SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena, who's going to help us unpack and make sense of what is happening. Sophie, a very good afternoon to you. A lot happening in just a short space of time. Talk to us about what this all means. Where to from here for Boris Johnson?
I think for Boris Johnson, it's just a matter of time. He did announce that he is not going to leave office until a new leader has been elected from the Conservative Party, and that leader who is expected to take over as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. But we know that the opposition is very adamant that he has to leave, and leave now. I mean, the leader of the Labour Party, Stemmer, said he has to leave this morning. And now the question is, when you look at the process of the Conservative Party in terms of how they elect their leader, how long will that take? We were told earlier on that the Conservative Party will converge only next month, and it is only then they will be appointing a leader amongst those 3 people that we have mentioned. But I think the front runner being the current Secretary of Defence, and we will wait and see what happens. But clearly Boris Johnson will soon not be the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. We can start saying that the outgoing Prime Minister. And
continue, Sophie.
Yes, I wanted us to listen to what he had to say in terms of his achievements.
I regret not to have been successful in those arguments, and of course it's painful not to be able to see through so many ideas and projects myself. But as we've seen at Westminster, the herd instinct is powerful. When the herd moves, it moves. And my friends, in politics, no one is remotely indispensable. And our brilliant and Darwinian system will produce another leader equally committed to taking this country forward through tough times, not just helping families to get through it, but changing and improving the way we do things, cutting burdens on businesses and families, and yes, cutting taxes, because that is the way to generate the growth and the income we need to pay for great public services.
That's Boris Johnson talking about his regrets, and also talking about the fact that in politics, I mean, we know people often say that one day in politics is just too much, and therefore this is happening in the United Kingdom.
I mean, as we said in our introduction, you know, pressure has been mounting for him to step down. You've alluded to it. Is there any indication of who's coming out to take over from Johnson? Is there an obvious, clear person that we can speak of?
For now, we can't have a firm word in terms of who is going to take over. But in terms of what is happening, I think the most popular candidate is the Minister of Defence. And therefore, I think that is the person who is going to take over, even though we know that the role played by the Exchequer in terms of, in South African term, the Minister of Finance, when he took a decision to resign yesterday, this is really what led to many others following. When you have a finance minister living. You know, even the markets do respond, and I think he had no choice. But I think the Minister of Defense or the Secretary of Defense is likely to take over. But we'll wait and see in terms of what the Conservative Party will do, and perhaps now or maybe next month, as Boris Johnson has pointed out, in terms of what he wants. But it is not about Boris Johnson anymore. It is up to the Conservative to have perhaps an urgent meeting and decide on this issue, or wait for next month.
And in fact, you know, over the past couple of weeks or so, you know, this is a man who everybody's questioning, how did we get to here? You know, what led exactly to his downfall? The Labour Party being vocal also in calling for Boris Johnson to resign. Does it have a strong voice?
Well, the Labour Party has been weakened. You would recall that after Tony Blair, I think the party has been struggling. You know that the leader after Tony Blair didn't do well, and the Labour Party became even smaller. But now they have a new leader, very vocal, and he was pushing for Boris Johnson to resign. Even when you listen to his arguments, he's quite charismatic and very decorated in terms of the language and body language. And I don't know, maybe they will be able to recover. I mean, the UK community has really experienced a mess. I'm sorry to say it, but it was a mess. Starting from when Boris Johnson took over, particularly his relationship with Donald Trump. I think he veered off the road, and how he handled the COVID-19 when it started, and later trying to recover for public gallery. But behind the scenes, he was doing something different. You know that the scandal, the party scandal, and today there's no party. And also later the appointments, particularly the one latest that has led to many people taking a decision and having a view that he is not fit for purpose, like the leader of the Labour Party has pointed out. And I think, I think it has been very bumpy and rough, but I think many people will also agree that there's a lot that he has done. I mean, you look at the current war in Ukraine, he was very vocal and upfront in terms of supporting Zelensky. Therefore, yes, it is indeed a mixed bag, but I can assure you many people in the UK were not impressed.
And just talking about other people who are possibly quite worried, other countries, you know, watching this very closely, asking themselves what it means for that particular country. We know that he did mention Ukraine in his speech that he made outside number 10 Downing Street, saying that, you know, they will continue to remain an ally to Ukraine. But what does this mean back home for us, South Africa? I mean, we remain the largest trading partner of the UK in Africa. Should we be worried with this resignation?
Not at all. Whoever will take over is going to continue with the relations that is in place right now in terms of trade relations and political relations. We may even be in a better position if it's someone who is not inward looking like Boris Johnson was, but only later he was trying to be this internationalist. And therefore, I think there's not much to really worry about. And I think by now, the president of South Africa has spoken to some senior officials in UK, you know, giving him an assurance that it will be business as usual. Our international relations minister is currently in Indonesia. In Indonesia, you have all the foreign affairs ministers of the G20 member countries. You know, South Africa is the only African country who is a member of the G20. And therefore, you cannot ignore or downplay the voice of South Africa. Yes, we are not number one on the continent in terms of the economy. It is Nigeria. but we are the most industrialized country on the continent, and in terms of relations, you cannot ignore South Africa. People often say South Africa is a gateway to Africa. It's not being arrogant, but it's the reality, because when you look at the headquarters of many multinational companies on the continent, they are here in Johannesburg, and therefore that speaks to the role of South Africa. And I think whoever becomes a leader would want to continue with a good relationship with South Africa.
Sophie Mokoena, let's leave it there for now. Thank you so much for your analysis. Appreciate it. Sophie Mokoena is, of course, SABC News International Editor. Well, let's continue here now. Public transport